Hey there. Today I'm going to do a little different video, something I haven't probably done before. I'm going to talk about why I switched to Castles and Crusades and why I like Castles and Crusades. Just a little background. I've been playing D&D or role-playing games since I was a kid, and now I'm older, so probably around 40-something years of playing games. Mostly D&D, but played a bunch of different things. I started with basic expert set, like pre-Redbox, and then went to Redbox, and then AD&D. Spent a lot of time playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, many years, till I was dragged into 3rd edition by my players. Played that for a while. I enjoyed it until it got to the higher levels, and it became pretty unmanageable. Played some Pathfinder because we didn't want to go to 4th edition. And then switched to 5th edition because Pathfinder at higher levels, 1E got kind of unmanageable. There wasn't a lot of great electronic tools back in the day to manage characters and NPCs, so really at higher levels it was tough, and at that time our campaigns were transitioning from edition to edition. Like our AD&D campaign ended up in Pathfinder and in 3rd edition, and then Pathfinder, and then ended because I just couldn't maintain it with the level of complexity and numbers and stuff at higher levels. They were like 16th, 17th level at that time. So switched to 5th edition. I liked it at first. I didn't like everything about it, but I did like it because it was simpler, and as I've gotten older, I've much preferred simpler, more streamlined games, rules light, if you will. Yeah, so I played 5th edition. I ran a lot of 5th edition. I had a 7-year 5e campaign, excuse me, and ran that to conclusion to high levels. The highest level in that game was 18th level by the time we were done. And at that point, that campaign lasted 7 years of real time. And by the end of that campaign, I was pretty tired of 5th edition. Like, I just saw, for me, the things that there was things that I didn't like, and it just didn't become what my thoughts on D&D were. I always, like a lot of people, I'll tell a lot of people my thoughts on 5th edition is it's not D&D to me. It's like Fantasy Avengers, which if you're looking for a game to play Fantasy Avengers, play 5th edition. If you like 5th edition, keep playing 5th edition. I play 5th edition, actually. I play in like 3 different 5th edition campaigns, but I don't run it anymore. And I ran it a lot. I ran 2 different campaigns. I ran games at my local game store. I ran 5th edition quite a bit, but I just got very tired of it and wanted to kind of get back to my roots in gaming, I guess. So I looked at a couple different systems. One of them was Old School Essentials, which I haven't played it. I own it. I think it's a great game. I actually think it's one of the gold standards of layout and editing for old games, or OSR style games. I really like how there's zero wasted space in the OSE books, and they're put together really well. They're really nice books. I'm hoping there's a possibility my Friday night group might play some OSE, and I would happily play it. But there's a couple things I didn't like about it, which aren't important, and they're minor. I could have fixed them in it, but then my cousin really turned me on to Castles and Crusades, and my cousin Dan, who plays in my games as well, and I knew about Castles Crusades. I knew about it when it came out during the 3rd edition era, which is when it was released. But back then I was younger and not as mature as I am now, I say laughingly. And to me, back then, if it wasn't D&D, like had that official name, I wasn't interested. So unless it was something totally different. So I didn't really ever look at Castles and Crusades, and having now run Castles and Crusades for the last 2 years, I really wish I'd jumped on it way back then, because I really do like it a lot. So we've been playing Castles Crusades for the last 2 years. If you've been following our campaign recaps here on YouTube, thanks for doing that. Appreciate it, and all the comments and stuff. Really enjoyed it. Going into it, I had players that, because I was kind of the 5th DM, I mean, we have other DMs in the group, and they run some really great campaigns, but for some of the guys, I was like the primary DM. And when I said I was switching to Castles Crusades, I met a little bit of resistance, but they were all willing to try it. And my buddy Dave, and he'll probably jump on here and tell you, he was one of my biggest. I've been gaming with Dave for a very long time, and he was one of the most resistant to switching. Like, he really liked 5th edition, and being on the player end, probably didn't see my complaints that I had about 5th edition, which is 5th edition is a very player focused game. It's not really great for DMs. It's great for players because they're very empowered with their characters, which is, if you're into that, that's great. But now, after 2 years, like, he is one of the biggest fans I have of the Castles Crusade system, and has said that he wished all of our games would switch to it. So it's just a matter of getting some time and experience, which he gave it an honest shake and then formed his opinion, which is great. That's what you should do on any game system or anything, really. So the reasons why I like Castles Crusades over like 5th edition or other games kind of like it. One, tonally, I like the game. It's not. It reminds me more of the D&D I grew up with. I tell a lot of people, like, when they ask me what it is, to me, playing Castles Crusades is like playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, except with better rules. I don't really have a huge problem with AD&D as far as rules go. I would play it if somebody wanted to run it, but I think Castles Crusades they've captured the tone of AD&D, but they have a really good solid rule set that so far we've enjoyed. I haven't found really much that I haven't liked about it, or I've had to change. I've altered a couple minor things just to fit our table in the characters that they're playing and stuff. Really minor stuff. So I really like that. I like the fact that the characters are not superheroes. Like in 5th edition, yep, they become superheroes. You can kill characters. We've had it happen in our campaigns. It's harder to do, especially at the higher levels. But in Castles and Crusades, they're definitely not superheroes, and they get stronger as they go. But it's more they get stronger through their equipment. They do get abilities and stuff, but they're just not rampant. And I found that this system, where you don't have a laundry list of class abilities to fall back on, it makes people actually be a little bit more creative, because people get locked into, especially if you've only played games like 5th edition, you get locked into this thought that when you see a character sheet that doesn't have a list of abilities, you're like, oh, well, I can't really do anything, and that's not true. Like, the way it works is you can do a lot of things. You need to describe to me as the castle keeper what you want to do, and I'll tell you what to roll, and if there needs to be a roll, and we'll sort it out. You don't need a laundry list of abilities. So I've seen a lot more creativity from the players, like in their actions and the combats. I think even the combats are more dynamic because they're trying different things when they do get into combat, which I didn't see a lot or as much of when we were playing, 5th edition. So I really like that. That's been really good. I really like. We just ran a session, and our the highest level character in the campaign right now is my son's ranger Lork, and he's 7th level, and he got killed. Like, he died in that episode. Spoiler if you haven't watched the recap, but yeah, he died. They're gonna fix that, but he died, and we almost lost another Sprawl. My buddy Matt's Dwarven Cleric. He went down to -5 hit points. So in 2 separate battles. So it was a tough session, but they're still very vulnerable, which I like, because it doesn't get boring and it doesn't get frustrating as a game master for me to run it when I just, it just seems like there's nothing I can do to challenge them. I want them to always feel challenged. So I really like that. One of the things that we've discovered through playing Castles Crusades is that it has a much slower leveling process than like 5th edition did. We don't use milestone leveling in this game. I'm not actually a really big fan of milestone leveling. I've used it and didn't care for it. I prefer XP, experience points. And so we've been playing 2 years. We've got about 41 sessions. And the highest level character is 7th level in our game. I think that's awesome. The feedback I've gotten from some of the players is they like it as well. Classes don't all level on the same. They don't all have the same advancement track. Each class has its own XP chart that they have to go through to level up. So the leveling's been really slow, much slower than we're used to in 5th edition. That was one of the things I actually didn't like about 5th edition when I ran it. Was you could, in a 5th edition game, your first level, you go kick 2 rats across the street, and suddenly you're 2nd level. I didn't like that at all. It didn't make sense to me, and the official reasonings for it that I saw from videos and stuff, from like the makers of that, creators of that version of the game, I didn't really agree with them, and I've never liked that. So I like the slow leveling. One of the things that does is, like, I have tons of ideas for like our campaign, which is mostly a homebrew campaign, 99% of it. And there's not much of a chance of them like leveling out of some of those ideas, because it's the progression is at such a maybe slow is not the right word, just not like a advanced pace, I guess. So I can use a lot of these ideas as long as I can figure out how to work them into the game, and get, if they're interested in pursuing those things, because the game is largely driven by what they want to do, mostly driven by what they want to do. So I can keep running these ideas, and I don't have to do a lot to shoehorn them in if they level out past them, because they're probably not going to. See, and another thing I really like about Castles and Crusades is the classes. And I'm talking about the classes in the core book, the Player's Handbook. They have other classes in some alternate books. I don't use those as PC classes, because they're kind of really niche, and some of them are a little bit, I don't know, they seem a little bit more powerful than the core classes, and I don't really think you need much more beyond the core classes. So I do save those other classes as like NPC classes, because I'm a big fan of, and I've always been this way, of the NPCs or bad guys, the big bads. They're capable of doing things that player characters aren't capable of doing, which maybe some people don't like that idea, but I like that idea because it makes them different. So they just fought the cult leader for the Cult of Meldeth, and I used the Luminary class from one of the books, one of the extra books, and they weren't really sure what she was, and they thought she was a wizard, but that's not really what she was. She was that class, so that worked. But the thing I like about the classes, getting back on track, is they're very distinct, and they're designed to be that way. One of the things I don't like about 5th edition, or I learned not to like about 5th edition over time, was how this intentional, and it's intentional, they have intentional bleed over of class abilities. So I just don't like that. I like everybody to have a distinct class. And so, like, when you have the core classes, especially, like, they have some extra, like, if you're familiar with AD&D or early, like, you have the core classes, fighter, wizard, cleric, rogue. I probably missed one, but you have those, and then they have some other. They have like the knight, the paladin, the ranger, and such. These classes, like, if you're missing a frontline fighter in your group, you notice that, like, because and we've had that happen, because I run West Marches style, so not everybody can, when they can't make every session, I don't hold up the game. We play. And sometimes, our frontline fighter guy can't make, like, my son, who plays Lork the Ranger, he was away at college, so he missed a few sessions. They missed having him there, not only just because he was a good frontline fighter, but also the Ranger abilities, like tracking and stuff like that. Slightly got made up with some NPCs, and then another character came in by my buddy Thad, played a few sessions with his Ranger, but they miss his ability up front. Like, Lork is the best frontline fighter the party has. Outside of, like, alternate characters, like you have Pounder, we have a half ogre named, his nickname is Pounder, played by my buddy Steve, and he's obviously a great frontline fighter, but he's not a main character in the group. So you miss those abilities, you miss having those people. If you don't have a rogue, like, things become exponentially more difficult when you're trying to sneak around, and because not everybody can just sneak. Like, you can move it quietly, but you'll never move as quietly as a rogue does or a ranger does in the wilderness. It just, they don't have that bleed over, which I think is great because it makes each character class very important, and you actually feel their loss when they're not with the party. You don't have a cleric. Well, there's not rampant healing in Castles and Crusades. There's clerics heal people. Paladins, I think we haven't had a paladin yet in the game, so I haven't read up on them. They may have lay on hands. I'd be surprised if they didn't. Pretty sure they do. But when the cleric's not around, people, you notice that people are like, oh crap, like they've had adventures where they're going in, they know it's going to be tough, and then, you know, Matt, my friend Matt plays a cleric. He can't make the session for whatever reason. Real life sucks. And so, you know, they're like, oh, this is going to be great. We don't have our cleric. So they feel that, and I think it's great. I will say too, on top of the classes, having played AD&D, we messed around with second edition. We didn't really, I wouldn't say we ever played second edition. We stole stuff from it for our AD&D games, or at least that's what I did. Third edition, fifth edition, Pathfinder. Castles and Crusades has the best version of the Ranger class I've ever seen. First of all, like a bunch of other classes, they can't cast spells, which is awesome. There's only 4 in the core classes. There's only 4 classes that cast spells, and that's the Cleric, the Druid, the Magic User, or Wizard, and the Illusionist. And they did a really good job with the Illusionist too. We've had that played. My buddy Dave, he's played Illusionist here and there. I had an Illusionist in I think he was an Illusionist in a one shot I ran for some fellow game masters at my game store. And the Illusionist class is really well done. I think all the classes that we've seen in game, I think, are really well done. Some are a little more maybe niche, like the Knight, but I think the Knight is actually really cool in the right campaign, and you get to, you know, certain things that really use his abilities as one to inspire others and stuff, because they can do that en masse as they get higher in level. And we're going to see a return of Orvon the Knight, a little spoiler for an adventure I'm working on writing right now. So we'll see him come back. But back to my point, the classes are really good. They've done a really good job of the class. They make all the classes distinct and important, you know, if you get them in the game. The Barbarian's great. We've had a Barbarian in the game. Rogue is really good. It's, you know, back to the way being a rogue should be. You know, we have Cosmo, the halfling rogue, and, you know, backstabs the way it should be. It's not, he has to work to get that, but when he does, he can be pretty devastating with it. So, very good job on the classes. The other thing I'll say, and this will be, I guess, a short list. I got through it pretty quick. Troll Lord Games makes Castles and Crusades. Great company, from my experience with them. They support gamers. They just want you to come to the table and have fun, play their game, play other games. They support veterans, which is great. I'm not a veteran, but I have friends that are, and it's great that a company like Troll Lord Games supports veterans. I think that's really important. So yeah, overall, I don't really have any huge complaints about Castles and Crusades at all. Like, it's really been a great game for me. I was towards the end of like most people would be, I imagine, at the end of 7 years, I was feeling a little burnt out. Anyway, I took like a month off. And then we had some space or time come up, and I wanted to run something. Got that itch back pretty quick to want to run a game. And I tried to put together actually a 5th edition game to run, because there was some stuff I wanted to do with our old campaign. I just didn't have it in me. Just trying to work on it just killed my motivation. And it was actually my buddy Dave, who I said earlier was like one of the most hesitant about switching to Castles and Crusades. He was like, oh, do you want to try something in Castles and Crusades? And I was like, yeah, I think I do. And the first session of this campaign was basically kind of a one-shot that I ran for a few of them, just for us to get a chance to play at the table, because our other gaming is all done online for the most part, with the exception of my son's game. We play in person. And then after that, for me, it just took off, and I really wanted to run it some more. Things that not things that I don't like, but like one of the hurdles, I guess is the best way to put it, was I've been playing like games like 5e and Pathfinder and 3rd edition for so long. Like, you kind of get locked into the mindset of how those games work. And then coming to Castles and Crusades, you know, where you're actually encouraged not to roll for everything that you do. I think that's a very easy trap to fall into in other games, and it's a very hard thing if you've played those games a lot to break that that habit. And it's still one that I'll sometimes struggle with. Like one of the guys will ask me a question, and my immediate response is like, "Oh, well, make this roll." And it doesn't have to be that way. They're very good when you read the player's handbook and you read about the attributes, because it's an attribute system like D&D, but they actually really use the attributes. I think they take more of a focus with the siege engine system, which is what Castles Crusades uses. They're more useful, but they're also like, they flat out tell you don't roll for everything. If you don't have to roll, don't roll. And I think that's awesome. I really do. And getting back into that style of play, I've really enjoyed it, and look forward to doing it some more. So yeah, that's about it. I'm sure there's about a billion other things I will think of as soon as I turn the video off as to why I like Castles and Crusades. But this is just the bulk of the reasons, and if any of the guys I play with have their reasons why they like it, or even criticisms they have of it, feel free. Oh, I know one thing I would have forgotten. I have found the system super easy to bring in stuff from other games into it. Like I played a little bit of Hyperborea, which I think is a pretty cool game. I'm looking forward to playing it with the creator at the end of September at my first gaming convention I'm going to. But like I modified how weapon specialization works for the fighter, because in Castles Crusades the fighter is the only one that gets weapon specialization, which I think is fine. But I've altered a little bit, like using the way Hyperborea does it with extra attacks as well, because I think you should get, even though you get, to hit and damage bonuses with the way it's done in Castles Crusades, is I added, you get the attack, multiple attacks, and I pulled that straight out of Hyperborea. Monster conversion, if you really want to get into the weeds about statting them out, which I've kind of grown further away from as I get older as a DM, just because I just don't like doing it. But it's super easy to do in Castles Crusades, because the monster stats, they're very similar to like what they looked like in AD&D. There isn't a billion different entries and stuff, so it's very simple to convert that stuff if you want to do like what I'd consider a hard conversion, where you have the stats all written out and everything. I don't do that a lot of times anymore, because over the years I've learned you don't really need most of that information. So I just kind of wing it, and nobody's complained so far. So that's how I do it. But yeah, it's super easy to convert, bring in other stuff. And you can play different styles of games with it, which is great. We haven't done like a high-powered, more superhero-ish game, because I just don't want to play those games or run those games. I play in those games plenty, but I don't want to run those games. So yeah, again, there's my jumbled reasons of why I prefer or really enjoy Castles and Crusades. And if you have any questions about the system, definitely not an expert. 2 years later, we're still learning stuff here and there. But would definitely, if you have a question, fire it off. Or if you've played it and like it, or want to try it, feel free to leave a comment. And I appreciate you all watching, and catch you at the next one.